Very nice to have you all here today. And this podcast is going to be the greatest podcast that there ever was, that there ever will be, the best one of all time, because today I have my dear friend Paula on. Hey, Paula, how's it going?
Hey, Alex, thanks for having me. It's going pretty well. How are you doing over in Hos Angeles?
I am doing well. I am doing very well. And I am really excited today to talk about our topic of the day, which is remote work, growing a business, getting all professional up in 2022. And there's no one better than my dear friend Paula here, who is my professionalism expert. She just exudes professionalism and networking, everything that comes with being in an office space, around an office space, or pursuing goals related to that of an office space. Isn't that right, Paula?
More or less. I feel like these are really, really kind ways to just say I'm boring, but we'll see how the
You're,
rest of the
I would
conversation
say
goes.
you're the farthest thing from boring, Paula.
That's very sweet.
Yeah, I don't want to hear you talk about yourself like that anymore. But why don't you do a quick 30-second introduction for my avid listeners and explain why it is you are so relevant as a subject matter expert when we talk about this topic specifically.
Absolutely. So great to be here, Alex. Thanks again for having me. My name is Paula and I live in Denver, and I am a retired self proclaimed digital nomad. And I guess I should explain what that is for those of you who don't know. I spent about 3 years of my life, maybe three and a half, fully location independent, no apartment, no house, working full time while traveling the world.
That's right. That's right. You did. So that's why I wanted you here today, because I don't think this antiquated way of going to work, this factory style that was popularized by Henry Ford in the 20s, of waking up early and working all day, long hours, 40-hour weeks, and in one place where you have to get your work done. I don't think that's the way of the future anymore, right? I think that work is moving remote, whether you like it or not. And I really wanted to bring you in, Paula, so we could maybe have a little fun discussion about it. So thank you for that kind intro. Um, but first, let's talk about something else. Um, Remote work, right? We're talking about that. Were you a remote worker before the pandemic, or are you a pandemic-induced remote worker?
So I am one of the very few not pandemic induced remote workers. I started
You
working
sick
full
fuck.
time. Yeah, lucky for me and my team, I got very used to Google Meets and Slack and, shitty Wi-Fi connections about a year and a half before we went really deep into COVID.
So did you even notice the pandemic, or was it just, business as
I
usual?
I definitely noticed it from a financial perspective, when, all of our clients fired us, like, the day we all went into deep quarantine. And actually, Alex, I think you and I were together in Colorado when the quarantine started, I just
Oh my
remembered.
God, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, I think when I think when I was visiting you, I remember I got off the plane. You were like, "Oh, was anyone coughing on it?" And I was like, "Haha, yeah, like don't get COVID," because we had no idea. We had
Oh, we had no
absolutely
idea.
no
And
idea.
and what's funny was I was, as you know, living in Southeast Asia at the time, right before I had seen you, and the, US Embassy or Department of State had issued a kinda get out of Southeast Asia notice or emergency warning, whatever it was. And I went over to Colorado and I remember being like, guys, like, I'm back in the US. Have you heard of this coronavirus? And this was back in January or February. And everyone's like, huh, what
There were still people that
coronavirus?
hadn't heard of it at that point.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, of course. And little did we know. So
Yeah. Well, great. So yeah, you can talk about remote work, pre and post pandemic. I personally had always had a job where I was allowed to work a little bit remote, at least for the last several years, and then became full time remote because of the pandemic. Switched jobs, so I work remote full time as well now. But you, I think I like to say that you've mastered it. I have always just kind of thrown my laptop up and gotten things done as I can. But you are a true master. And so how did you start doing it before the pandemic, and how has it changed since?
yeah, so I'll be honest, I don't think remote working has changed much since, other than I think more large scale companies and corporations have gotten a lot more used to it. I think prior to working remotely, I worked for a large global ad agency, and I was, looking back now, it's crazy. We didn't even have like organized video conferencing through Teams or really that expectation of being on video and doing more than just like conferencing someone in from their cell phone in a different office. When your question how I started was through Google Meets, through Slack. It was honestly pretty easy and seamless to set up. I knew that I was going to be remote for the long term.
Well, let me cut you off there, Paula, because
Yeah,
you're
sure.
being modest. I don't think you've mentioned you started your own company. That's how you started working remote, right?
Okay. Well, if we want to get into those specifics, yeah, I can definitely give some background there. So at the time, I was living in DC, doing a ton of business travel and working for a global ad agency. And I was kind of at the point in my career where I needed to make some serious moves, work for a different type of company, like in a bigger market, like such as New York City or London. But I wasn't really in the mood to make those moves or switch into political. So I kind of woke up one day and decided, you know what? Now is the time in my life where I'm 26 years old. I don't have a partner or a mortgage or a kid or any real responsibilities. And I think my apartment lease was coming to an end. So I was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to sell all my stuff. I'm going to move. I'm going to do some independent consulting remotely. I'm going to go down to Mexico and be a bartender in a hostel and just figure this out. And most people thought I was pretty crazy, but I did it. I packed up my stuff. I took a backpack down to Tulum and showed up in a hostel, got a bartending gig like twice a week or something, and worked from my little hostel lobby on my laptop trying to take like conference calls with people in New York City and DC and various big cities. So, yeah, hopefully
That's
that
fucking
answers your question
insane. I
there.
can't yeah, I can't believe you were able to accomplish anything like that. That sounds distracting as shit. But I
Yeah.
do I mean, we'll just put the cards on the table. I mean, remote work's badass, right? We enjoy the freedom that comes along with it. Um, so I've always kind of enjoyed it. I kind of like that you strive to get into it, but what I wanted to talk about is you really did the next level experience, right? I've always worked from home, but still kind of treated it as much like work as I possibly can, tried to mimic an office environment. I do take more breaks, but I think it makes me more productive in the long run. You, however, have traveled everywhere doing it. And I think that's kind of what everyone dreams of or thinks of when they're told that a job is remote or it's a work from home. I know you've traveled, like you said, to Southeast Asia while you were working. I know you were in Europe for a little bit. That digital nomad life, I think, is really what people strive for, but not a lot of people do. So what is that like? I know you're not doing it anymore. Was it exhausting? Where did you kind of go in from that regard?
Oh man. I mean, it was really the best experience of my life. Think of like study abroad for adults, but better. I think it changed me as a person. It made me a lot more confident, and just a bigger risk taker, I think, in general, which luckily for me went in my benefit. My initial plan was go down, travel a little bit, work part-time, move back up to New York in like June of 2019 and get a job. But that actually led me to meeting some really cool people, making some great connections. One of which led me to working on about 8 different markets of Uber Eats on a very big global ad campaign, from a connection I made at a hostel, ironically. And that's kind of what led me to starting my business. So I went from a backpacker in a hostel, like trying to work remotely a little bit, to having a global company with 13 employees across 6 or 7 different time zones. So I think there's a lot of opportunity if you put yourself out there and you network and go about and work remotely. But yeah, I had, like I said, the greatest experience of my life.
Paul, I really enjoyed how you gave me the high school valedictorian speech version of what happened. I really liked how you mentioned your change over time and some of the benefits there. That
Yeah,
was that
AP
was that was
history,
really
you know?
great. I'm tearing up. Um, no, I definitely admired that too. Always kind of wanted to do something like that, and I wonder if me being a part of larger organizations in my career where there's a lot of people maybe checking in on me or persons I need to communicate with regularly could have made that situation a little more cumbersome than maybe something like what you did, where you were running your own show, setting your own hours, getting your own work done, and kind of turning a profit in that regard. So Pretty cool stuff. Do you think that, as maybe COVID starts to calm down a little bit in the near future, that more opportunities like that will arise for younger professionals or professionals at large?
Absolutely. And I think even right now, I see these opportunities arise left and right. I think, with the pandemic, remote work culture has proven itself possible, right? It's proven itself successful. You have leaders like former CEO of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, going out and saying, "Hey, you guys never have to come back to office." We have Google and in these large tech engines that just haven't even bothered with return to office policies. And I think subsequently, these remote working hostels, which is primarily where I lived and traveled through, are skyrocketing in popularity. I lived at a couple of these places, which are really cool. They're like co-working spaces with a fancy hostel, for lack of better words, combined into it. So you have this nice co-living and co-working community of very dedicated entrepreneurs or remote workers or people who have really, really inspiring jobs of kinds. And I see new establishments pop up like this left and right. In fact, Outsite, a partner that we worked with, and I got to know over a lot of the folks over there when I was in Bali, they just opened a location in Boulder, and I believe they have several in the LA area.
On one of these hostile adventures where you were trying to work, what was the most distracting, hair pulling out monkey business you ever experienced that basically made you throw your laptop on the ground and give up? Did anything like that happen?
Oh, yeah, gosh. Well, let me preface this that I literally have the opposite of ADD. I can hyper focus in any distracting environment. So I
Okay.
will say I am blessed with that. I think one good story that comes to mind is I was actually at a cafe in Tulum, Mexico, and I was trying to get a break from the hostel. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be super focused. I'm going to take my pitch call here. It was with a prospective client that actually ended up being a client of ours for 2 years. And they just decided at this cafe at like 3 p.m. Central Time that they were shutting the Wi-Fi off. And I
Just
like
turning the Wi-Fi off but staying open?
just staying open. And I went and complained and I was like, "Hey, like, what the fuck? Like, I'm on a call." They're like, "Oh yeah, it's happy hour." And I quickly dial back in from my phone or my hotspot or something like that. And within a minute and a half later, I kid you not, my humps starts blasting and like the phones above me are freaking shaking. And my client on the other end is like, "Are you in a club?" And like, obviously I look questionable. I'm in a freaking tank top and it's 100 degrees outside. And I was like, no, I swear I'm in a cafe, but this is like the best I can do right now.
So did you retain that business or what happened with
Yeah,
that?
we did retain that business
They
ironically.
loved my humps. We're
They
gonna
love my
skate
humps.
to
It's
one
actually,
song and one
they're
song only.
a they're a government contractor cybersecurity firm, ironically. So not the, kind of client you think would be big Black Eyed Peas fans and even
You
want to
know,
work
you'd
with
ex
a subcontractor abroad, but hey.
Yeah, you'd expect them to be a bit more buttoned up to not as much be into the Black Eyed Peas thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, if you'd just been working from a regular office, right next to Dunkin' Donuts or something, that would have never happened.
Oh,
So
yeah.
there you go. Strike one against remote work. There's a big problem with it.
Oh, yeah. Tons of, like, stories like that too. I also have been in a situation where, I was on a call and, like, a mariachi band arrived at a hostel, and they were just, like, having a performance in my
Was this
background, and I
also in Tulum?
this actually was in Tulum, yeah, so a lot of these happen in Tulum. I'll try to think of some,
All right, you
bigger
hear that,
and more
kids?
less
Don't go work from home in Tulum. It's not gonna
No, no.
work.
Well, Tulum, to be fair, has evolved quite in the last, 2.5 years. They have co-working spaces left and right, and I mean, the development there can't even keep up with its
It's
infrastructure, but
evolved. Oh, it's good
very
to
much
know.
so.
I've
Oh,
never
yeah.
I've never been to Tulum.
Go check out Digital Jungle, everyone. They're great.
Well, great. I appreciate the candor when it comes to that kind of stuff. I have here a list of some crazy bizarre online jobs. I've seen a couple, but these are pretty interesting. This one I don't think really counts as an online work from home job because it's called a friend rental. So you get to someone there's a website called Rent a Friend, and
Okay.
they give you potential friends to choose from between $10 and $50 an hour. And they'll go to the movies with you or hang out. I suppose now they're doing virtual friend services like Zoom,
Okay.
FaceTime, texting. I also
Is
see,
this like a G-rated escort service or something to help keep, like, nursing home residents
listen,
in
Paula, we're not like
check?
you. We don't all fuck our friends, okay? I think some
Whoa,
people just
whoa,
want
whoa.
true platonic relationships, okay? Maybe, give them the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, I'm sure
Okay,
you
but if
see.
you went to rentafriend.com or somebody referred that domain to you, what are the first thoughts that come to mind?
Yeah, I guess I'll give you that. The rest of these are things that I would expect you could do remotely or from a like virtual golf instructor or
Okay, interesting.
being a shopper, telehealth nurse. That's a pretty legitimate one.
Mhm.
Fitness coach. I think it would suck to have to get your fitness coaching
Yeah.
online. But yeah, I mean these aren't that great. I think I saw some other ones.
Well, there's
Happiness engineer. Any crazy work from home jobs you've heard about that just anyone could do from anywhere?
crazy ones, huh? I would say the top 3 remote working jobs of people I've encountered are a, like, online tutor teaching English to, like, Spanish speaking or Asian speaking countries. Number 2, a life coach, tons of life coaches, and that's a really arbitrary term. I've met all sorts of life coaches that did, like, a one-week online class and or went into enlightenment into the woods or did, like, an ayahuasca
I think
ceremony.
there's some pretty advanced, licensing processes for those. I mean, I'm sure you don't need to have them if you can get clients, but I do know that some people spend a lot of money and time building, I guess, an appropriate resume for being a life coach.
Absolutely, and this is purely my personal experience of the kind of people you meet on an island in Bali. I am sure there's very, very well credentialed life coaches out there across the world. I guess in terms of crazy, I think people would come back from like 1 week retreats and then think they're life coaches. And then what did we say? The online tutoring, life coaches. Oh, and virtual assistants, which I didn't know was a thing. But a lot of, online businesses that scale and need a lot of admin and miscellaneous support do go off and hire virtual assistants. And there are some pretty good courses out there and self-teachable resources to become one.
Right. That sounds pretty good. I just found one, a gumologist, being a gum taste tester. So chewing
Okay.
gum and then needing to distinguish the different flavors, which some estimate there's usually north of 70 to 80 ingredients in a typical piece of chewing gum. So you might get some variety there.
Huh.
This is boring. I don't like this. Let's move on.
I'm
Well,
intrigued.
the one thing I really wanted to talk to you about today,
Yeah.
as I do know you have a lot of experience with this, is WeWork, the everyone's favorite American commercial real estate company that provides flexible shared workspaces for tech startups and services for other enterprises. So WeWork, what is your impression of it? What's your experience with it? I assume as a digital nomad, you worked out of a lot of WeWorks, and I'm using the term WeWork to maybe describe any organization or workspace that is similar to it, in a lease building with whatever resources you'd find at a WeWork. So you can include that in here, but just wanted to know your perspective and experience with WeWork, because I'm sure you've had a decent amount of time in them.
Yeah, so actually in 2019, one of the perks of getting an Amex Platinum credit card was a year-long unlimited international WeWork membership. So I actually had the fortunate experience of trying a lot of different WeWorks both
You
nationwide
could go
and around the
anywhere
world.
to
You
anyone,
could
you have
go
to pay any
anywhere, yes.
fees.
It was this, like, flex membership. I think it typically cost, like, $400 a month, but Amex and WeWork had some partnership, and I got a year's worth of this, which was awesome. Um, of course, we know WeWorks had a lot of drama in the news,
Oh, we'll
like
get into that, don't worry.
okay. But as for my personal experiences, I've had really great experiences. I've been to several WeWorks in, the US, in Denver, in LA, in SF, in New York City,
New Orleans, I
Washington,
met you in
DC,
one in New
New Orleans.
Orleans once.
Yeah, New Orleans. Yeah, you and I met up at a different co-working space. I think it was called
Oh, it
Launchpad.
wasn't WeWork?
Launchpad co-working. Yeah, it was
Oh,
Launchpad
okay.
co-working. And I've had really great experiences, like, it's really reliable Wi-Fi, you can rent conference rooms, you can really be in the zone and focus, and they have printing services and free cold brew on tap and kombucha and everything you'd need. So I thought it's great. Where I really liked WeWork was I didn't have an office space, and actually we still don't. Being able to bring in clients that were in town and needing to like do a brainstorming session or have something on a whiteboard, it was really easy to set that up through WeWork. And the staff I've encountered, like even thinking back, to the Amsterdam locations or Denver or Singapore, have all been just beyond kind and professional and very, very helpful. So my personal experience with WeWork, mostly in 2019 through this promo, was incredible.
So you've never showed up and paid for a WeWork from what I'm understanding. You've always just kind of used this promo that you had?
Yeah, for the WeWorks. Now, the other co-working spaces that are independently owned can be really cool, and those really vary by city and what kind of communities are derived there. I think the best co-working space I'd ever been to, and arguably the best co-working space in the world, was in Canggu, Bali, and it was called Dojo Co-working. And the community that Michael, the founder there, had fostered was absolutely incredible. We had daily events and daily like educational panels. I spoke at a couple of them. We had organized dinners, we had organized trips around the islands. It truly, really felt like a study abroad for adults. And I've never been a part of a unique community like it
Yeah, I
elsewhere.
suppose that was gonna be my question, and it's gonna be tough to answer this because there seems to be so much variety. Obviously, a situation like the one you had in Bali where I guess you slept
Of
there
course.
too and got all this additional perks and, had organizational kind of benefits that went along with it is a bit different than just, an office space. But what would you say you'd be willing to pay for a membership or each time you went in? What would you say the value is? I think um, the one I worked in, if you came in for just a day, it was somewhere around 20 to $40. Does that sound right?
Yeah, usually they're about 20 to $40 for day passes specifically. I think the value really varies by like what your goals are and what you're looking to do, right? Like I'm happy to pay $25 for a day if I can go in there and use a monitor and have guaranteed Wi-Fi, print out a bunch of legal documents I need to sign, and have coffee and kombucha and free food, right? Like that's a
Yeah.
no-brainer. I've been to not as well established co-working spaces that have similar pricing structures that don't even have AC and it's 100 degrees. So
Okay.
that value is a bit different there, or they're really, really crowded and there's no place to sit, or the chairs aren't comfortable, etc. I think it's important really to do your research and be very clear with yourself what you're looking for. If you're the kind of person that doesn't get distracted in a cafe, just go to a cafe if you don't have calls. But if you have 6, 7, 8 hours of calls a day and you need a monitor and extra setup, then yes, absolutely invest in a co-working space. I think that was like insiders number one tip for like working remotely and traveling was
Right.
invest in a co-working space. Like don't go to calls and expect for you to yield the same productivity you would in an office.
So my experience is a little different. I worked for a big company where we had our own office space, but at a certain point, we had too many employees in our office. This was a while ago. I don't work here anymore. But they rented a couple rooms in a WeWork type place called Cross Campus. And I worked out of it with my coworkers for a couple, maybe 6 months. It was only supposed to be maybe a month at first. And it was interesting. There were things I did like about it. It was cool to maybe be around different people and see different companies and get to know what they were going on. But we had to be really secure with our stuff all the time. We had to lock our doors,
Mhm.
ensure all of our, meetings were held in our secure rooms or what have you. At my WeWork, we did not get free cold brew or kombucha. We had to pay for that, but beer was free. But I never wanted. I mean, I was there with my company. I wasn't gonna have a get a buzz on in the middle of the workday. And then I think they turned it off at 5 p.m. So if I stayed late, I wouldn't have a beer either. So it was just an interesting space. I thought it was cool and kind of kitschy. I definitely enjoyed it when I would travel the few times I worked out of one, but I never really saw the, I guess, total addressable market and the billions of dollars in valuation that they received. So I do want to talk a little bit about the scandal. Um, Sounds to me, kind of the story goes, Adam Newman was the CEO, right? He founded the company in 2010 and just did a really good job of, building interest in it. He was super kitschy and heady, never wore shoes, never ate meat, smoked a ton of weed, had this vision. I think he's a distant relative of Gwyneth Paltrow, if I'm not mistaken. Have you heard that?
Oh, I have not heard that, no.
I know she's a pretty heady woman herself. I think she's got that candle that you didn't believe me that she has.
Oh my
For all
god.
my listeners, go ahead and look up what Gwyneth Paltrow's candle does or smells
Spare
like.
yourselves. Don't.
But they kind of went through the ringer in 2019
Yeah.
after they filed for an IPO and actually had to pull it back off the table because they just weren't ready for that.
Mhm.
And essentially, it was just a company where once their financials came to light, when you want to go public, you got to make a lot of your documentation public. Um, Everything got scrutinized and understood a little bit better. There was obviously some additional issues with um, a lot of their backing came from the Saudi Arabian government. So when there was upheaval in Saudi Arabia, there was bigger issues at point, but it kind of resulted in a situation where they went from being valued at 47 to $67 billion down to under 10 billion. They had to
Yeah.
lay off over 2,400 employees. Um, Basically, obviously, we already talked about pulling the IPO. Adam Newman was kind of kicked out of the board. They bought him out of his seat in the board and had him step down as CEO. And a lot of it was because in kind of his vision of the organization and what he described as the total addressable market, he essentially said that the total addressable market for his business and his business being, flexible office spaces was north of $3 trillion. And he had just basically said any person who works in an office is a potential customer of his business,
Mhm.
right? Anyone in America and anyone that has an office job internationally. So really ran into some trouble there. And then on top of that, additional things came to light. He was a little sketchier CEO, kind of like the
Mhm.
traditional Silicon Valley tech kind of bro startup
Yeah.
culture, right? I think he there was a woman that had reported some questionable actions at one of his retreats, and then I think he was constantly traveling with smoking with or smoking weed and then traveling with a ton of pot as well. What are some of the other things? I mean, what else do you know about this?
Yeah, one of the stories that really sticks to me is I think Adam Newman had pulled his kids out of school. His kids were about like 6 or 7 years old, and he and his wife started like an entrepreneurship K through 6 program that was like completely unaccredited, and kids would go and like learn how to start businesses. And I mean, in theory, some of the principles are valued. Like you'd go and you'd grow
I
your
mean,
own
clearly he's a wacky
vegetables.
dude, right?
Yeah, petty as you say, but yeah, just
Yeah.
I remember that whole, that anecdote there.
Yeah, I think a lot of smoking weed on a private jet. He would serve employees tequila shots when discussing layoffs.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the big things he did was trademark the term "we." So eventually, when he had to step down, in SoftBank, the what is now the parent company that owns, I think, an 80% stake in WeWork, had to pay him north of $5 million, almost $6 million for the word "we." Like just some wacky behavior. Um, and I wondered, I mean, do you think it does kind of seem to me, I know this whole shared economy, he would describe it to investors as you're investing in a physical social network, right? This is going to be how everyone works. And really, I mean, he was just leasing building space, renovating it, putting some cool office stuff in there and furniture and what have you, and then charging pretty extreme premiums to daily
Mhm,
users. And that's tough if this is kind of filled out with flavor of the week startups that could fail at any second and obviously wouldn't continue to make
mhm.
payments, right? So I mean, do you think this is a business model that has legs that we're going to continue to see grow? I mean, obviously other companies do something similar.
Well, let me let me put it this way. Why would anyone in Manhattan want a startup subleasing company as their tenant?
Right.
You know, like, I think a lot of these direct to consumer companies are hot and trendy and techy and cool, and when you take a step back, you said so yourself, WeWork was nothing but a subleasing company.
Hmm.
I think, there's a huge difference in my experience and my observations from WeWork and the other independent co-working spaces I've been to, or even ones that were a bit smaller but had, several locations. Those strive and prioritize building community. WeWork does
Right.
not. WeWork is office space. And WeWork, I cannot imagine, makes any money off of the $25 a day pass somebody has to buy to come into the Soho location, right? They're making money off of the corporations that are leasing the large office spaces. And I don't think early on enough they recognize that the unique value proposition of these co-working spaces and what people actually wanted out of those is the community, is the networking, is the events. People go to co-working spaces independently that are bored of working from home or who are entrepreneurs that are looking for their next hire, right?
Right.
Um, I got a couple of jobs out of WeWork both and other co-working spaces specifically. But I can tell you the networking is far, far less than many of the other smaller spaces I've been to.
Okay. Well, that's a good take on it. I like that too. I think I've always been kind of hesitant to maybe see the market valuation that Adam Newman was able to see, but he ran into some on top of it as well. So, oh, I do see this now. What you were talking about, We Grow. It was
Yeah, we grow.
the
That's what it
private
was.
school for children age 3 till maybe they're in fourth grade, and
Yeah.
his wife Rebecca was the CEO of WeGrow, and then We Live was his co-living venture that he started in 2016. So it's gonna be We Grow, We Work, We Live. Oh, that's cute.
I remember we lived about yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there are businesses that do shit like this. I mean, he basically wants a hostel that people have long-term rentals in, I guess.
Yeah,
So that's pretty interesting. But cool. No, I'm glad I got to hear it. But yeah, I don't think I ever had an amazing experience in one, but as opposed to, I'd probably prefer working out of a WeWork or something like that than maybe just a cafe or a friend's
certainly.
basement if I can, right? So
Yeah,
cool.
and I should caveat that the amazing experiences I've had at WeWork branded co-working spaces specifically,
Hmm.
haven't been with the intent to go and network and meet people. It was I was passing through town, I needed a quiet place with Wi-Fi, and that's what it achieved. Um,
Great. So right on. Well, all right, that's good. I'm glad we talked a little about that. I
yeah.
do want to go back to maybe you started your own business. What was attractive to you about that? How has it evolved? As a company that's full time remote, do you think before a lot of the online and remote working tools that we have today, Google Meet being one of those, this would have been possible, or is this completely a product of its times? Just kind of everything you've been able to accomplish since the outsourcing and scaling using kind of additional tools that we have today.
Yeah. So I think if we go back to starting a business, and I we touched on this a little before, I wanted to take extended trips and travel and be abroad for extended period of time and not be bound to a PTO schedule and be checking my emails and have to, you know, call to someone else. So that's really what was the primary driver of me going and doing extended remote working places to Tulum, Mexico to start. And I think I had actually no intention of starting a business, ironically. I don't know if I remember sharing that with you guys early on, and all our friends, but
Sounds
I was
familiar.
yeah, I was in Tulum, and it was, I think, April or May of 2019, I'd landed this Uber deal and the work kept growing. It started off with like one small project for Uber corporate, and then it led to, "Hey, we really like your work. We like what you do. Can you do this for like 8 different markets of Uber Eats globally?" And I was like, shit, no, I can't. And then I kind of paused and thought to myself, well, I can. Why can't I hire people? Right? Like, I don't need to go back to New York and work for another agency. I can do this myself. And I did. I hired my first contractor, who's a good friend of mine. He was working in the hostel at the time, and a couple of others. And that slowly grew and grew. It grew when I was in Bali as well, and then back in the US. And I think over time, we've had about a total of 22 mix of contractors and employees working for PN at this point.
Kick
It's
ass, Paula.
evolved quite a bit in 3 years. Yeah,
Kick ass. And it sounds like you would say your desire to work remote really led you to this.
absolutely. Yeah. I really wanted to see other parts of the world. I'd heard of these different like co-working spaces, and I'd seen people work these virtual assistant jobs or become these coaches or social media influencers, and I was like, "Well, I have a skill that's really hot and I can do remotely. If there's Wi-Fi, I can totally be a freelancer."
Get it done. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right. I'll hit you with some fast lightning round questions if you don't mind.
sure thing.
So when you're working remote, what are your must-haves? What do you need before you can get any work done?
Great question. I have this portable monitor, which is awesome. It's like no bigger than 13 by like half an
I
inch.
think
It
I've
plugs
seen these.
in.
It attaches the back of your
Yeah, it
laptop.
attaches right there. I do
Oh,
have
that's so
that.
cool.
That is super helpful. Definitely need that. I'm not a big like mouse and keyboard girl, but I definitely need a second screen. And most importantly, actually blue light glasses. Staring at a screen like 11, 12, 13 hours a day definitely can produce headaches. And the blue light glasses have been a lifesaver to me.
I mean, it sounds like you could use that in a regular office too, but that's fine. That's fine. Um, understand the assignment next time. But what do you, if anything, what do you miss about working in a traditional office space
I miss having friends I can turn around to and be like, "Hey, do you wanna go down the street and get a coffee?"
as opposed
Um,
to approaching a stranger every time in a shared workspace?
yeah, I have done that before and, I've actually made some great friends of it, but I do miss kind of the camaraderie and working on projects together in person, and I think, while remote work has proven itself possible through the pandemic, I do think a lot of industries, specifically mine, really suffers from not having that in-person camaraderie and collaboration. So I do miss that. And some of the times where we've had our full team in Denver now, makes you really appreciate the few times in person you do get per year.
Do you know anyone that's hated working remote, and what was their justification if they had it?
Yeah, I have one friend, an old coworker, that hated working remote so much that he moved back down to Austin, Texas, where his job was based. He was living in Denver for a while, and I think he just personally like wasn't very focused independently, like couldn't find a place to focus, whether it was working from home or in a cafe or in a co-working space. But that's probably the most drastic one I've heard.
Do you, how often do you have days where you never leave your house because you're staying working?
Do I want to admit that? I would say the longest I'll go is, like, 3 days without leaving my house, but that's really if
Jeez.
it's, like, fricking cold and there's, like, I don't wanna go outside. I try to book a workout class every morning, and I'm, like, pretty good friends now with everyone at my spin studio down the street here in Denver, so that's been a game changer.
All right. And why or why not would you recommend somebody get a fully remote job versus maybe a partially remote job? And can you see any benefits to, just working from home 2, 3 days a week?
Yeah, I think, the hybrid structure is what everyone needs at this point, given everyone's unique family situations with the pandemic. I think I would have not enjoyed working in a remote environment maybe the first 2 or 3 years of my career because I benefited so much from being in these in person meetings and sitting next to my colleagues and listening to them, pitch to clients on calls and have these tough conversations. So just that exposure, I feel like I was really quite a sponge in my early days, and I definitely feel like that, isn't as achievable with remote work.
I think I can get behind that. I think early in my career, it would have not made any sense to work from home. Not that I got a lot out of some of the things that I went through early in my career, but definitely building those connections. I think having somewhere to show up to was pretty good structure in my early 20s. And who knows what horrible thing I could have done wrong if I had just been left to my own devices all the time. So I get that. I moved into a partial work from home model a few years into my career, and I liked that a lot, but it certainly made me dread and hate the days I had to go into the office way more than I ever did when I was going all the time. Maybe it was
Yeah.
just a matter of sleeping in and not having to take a shower before I got started, but I
Yeah.
definitely struggled with it. And I think by the end of my first partial remote, partial in office job, I was starting to work from home 3, 4 days a week, sometimes 5. And, I was getting a lot of work done. So as long as I told my managers, sorry, I'm way too busy to take that extra hour to commute to and from work, they were fine with it. But I think I'm with you on that. As you get a little more skilled in your labor, it might not
Yeah.
be as necessary to be in the office.
But on the flip side, as you accumulate more direct reports, I found it managing them, especially the junior ones from afar, can be a lot more
Yeah, they don't
challenging.
they don't let me manage any of those. I don't know. I don't even know what those words mean.
Direct reports? Aren't you one to someone?
I must be because people tell me what to do all the time. I've got some fascinating remote work stats for you if you're ready for them.
Oh, yeah, hit me.
So I guess this is as of 2021. I have no source other than this website I'm reading it from, but 55% of businesses globally offer some capacity for remote work. 18% of the workforce telecommute on a full-time basis. That seems low in the pandemic, but maybe this is
Yeah,
something else. 77% of telecommuters report being more productive. 37% of remote workers say the best way to boost productivity is to take regular breaks. 30% of telecommuters say they save upward of $5,000 a year. It's pretty good. I would say I probably save more than that with the LA
I
gas
definitely
prices.
don't.
You
So,
don't?
I don't. I feel like I'm, like, such an anomaly. I definitely
Spend
taking
more?
Yeah, taking a break, definitely throws my day out of whack. I'm, again, the kind of person that can sit down embarrassingly, I guess, in front of a screen for 8 hours and hammer everything through. I don't save money because I work in advertising, and when you work in advertising, you have vendors taking you out to manicures and to fancy dinners and, like, paying for your blowouts, and now I have to pay for all that shit myself.
Right.
Um,
I mean,
yeah, so
I would say that I mean, whether or not regular breaks boost productivity, I would take those, when I worked in an office too. I didn't just sit in front of my screen the whole day. Have you ever heard of the book, When by Daniel Pink? Have you ever heard of that?
no, I actually haven't. I
Oh,
gotta
it's pretty interesting. This guy
check it out.
basically does all the research in the world about when the best time in a day is to do something, or when the best time in your life is to do something based on these statistics, based on the kind of person you are.
Huh,
If you're a night owl, if you're an early bird, or whatever. Like for example, one thing he cited is that, and this is Daniel Pink's research, that a vast majority of medical malpractice suits in surgery involve a surgery that had been done either late morning or afternoon. So essentially saying that doctors are less likely to wash their hands as their day goes on because they get tired.
yeah,
They're more likely to look forward to a lunch break, so to maybe kind of mess up or make a little mistake. And that you bring that risk down considerably if you are to work or have surgery in the early morning when it's the doctor's first thing on the table. They're super attentive just because, they are human. They do, kind of go through the same lulls in a day that we might. So he purports that if you don't want to die on the operating table, the best thing to do is to ensure that
yeah,
you have
schedule a
very
morning
early in the morning.
surgery.
So that's what the book is about. Um, but he talks a little bit a lot. There is a big section breaks throughout the workday and how it's been proven to make you more productive, even if it's just for 20 seconds to look at something out the window or something. So that made me think of that. It's pretty interesting read if you've ever picked it up.
Yeah, absolutely, I'll check it out and make sure that any surgeries I schedule are, like, 7 a.m. not moving
7
forward,
a.m.
right?
Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
rule.
But no, I mean, that totally makes sense. I mean, I think my most productive I will have a much more productive day if I, like, get up at 6, work out, like, have a large breakfast, and then hammer work out until, like, 2 or 3, as opposed to, like, trying to schedule in these little breaks and work till 6 or 7. I think the latter
Right.
I'm going to accomplish double.
Yeah,
And
I
also,
do
who
see.
wants to work when it's dark and cold outside, right? Like, it gets
Yeah.
dark at, what, 4:45 now, so
This stat I definitely makes a ton of sense. 99% of remote workers want to continue telecommuting in the future. I definitely believe that.
yeah,
It says
absolutely.
people who work remotely earn 4,000 more per year on average. What do you think about the kind of the age old question? I'm sure every company has to deal with. Say somebody, you got two people that perform the same job, and they are working remote, right? But one person is
Mhm.
living in Los Angeles or New York City, and one person is living in wherever, Iowa or Arkansas, somewhere where the cost of living is much less. Like, do you believe same work, same pay, or that an error? Like, let's say you've got an employee and you're dealing with this kind of question. I've always kind of thought of this, and as someone, as a coastal elite who lives in a very expensive city, I would absolutely want more money than somebody somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I live in Denver, we charge New York rates, and I pay everyone New York rates. I don't care. I have colleagues who live in the middle of nowhere, Florida, and ones who live on the Upper West Side in Manhattan, and they all get
So,
paid
so your
competitive New York
argument
rates.
is just pay everyone the most you can possibly pay them.
Hey, absolutely. It's a
Right.
freaking, like, candidates market right now. The Great Resignation and, every
The
small
Great
business owner.
Resignation. That's cute. I like that. I'm gonna say that.
Yeah, the New York Times did a fantastic piece, earlier this year on the Great Resignation. I highly recommend you read that, but it's
Paula,
crazy,
your
like
your terminology is like porn to a job interviewer. It's just so perfect. It melts out of the mouth
Oh my
like
gosh, that's
butter or something.
so endearing, but, no, really, like, it's crazy, like, this past summer, I solely I have a financial consultant for the business, and we were looking at numbers, and they pretty much said, "Yeah, the reason you slightly, didn't hit your revenue goals for 2022 is because or 2021, excuse me, is because you weren't able to get the labor you needed to fulfill that." Everyone's 100+% maxed out, billable, etcetera, but the labor market is a crazy, crazy world right now.
Yeah. No, makes
So,
tons
yeah,
of
you gotta,
sense.
like, I mean, I hear these stories, like, I've coworkers who work at large tech giants I won't name, and I hear stories that they're getting enticed with, like, 20% raises and delivered
Uh-huh.
Pelotons to their home and vegan home chef deliveries and begging them not to quit and go to a competitor.
I do know a company that is doing Pelotons to
Yeah.
work from home employees, which
Oh,
I
yeah.
still there's a stock that's taking a big thump. I still don't understand the appeal on, but
The
maybe it's
Peloton?
not
Well,
for
the stock's
me.
been taking a thump because of the whole Sex and the City revival situation. Did you
Oh,
hear about
right,
that?
right. Yeah, I did. Right.
Yeah.
The guy that there's a
Yeah.
guy that's an actual rapist or alleged rapist on Sex and the City, and he on a Peloton in the show. Is that right? What happened?
Yeah, like Sarah Jessica Parker's boyfriend, big and I'd never watched the first Sex and the City, so I don't know the background, but
But you're
he
watching this
I
new one?
no, I've seen all the news and trades about it,
Oh, okay.
but yeah, Peloton stock, like, declined because he dies on a Peloton, and Sarah Jessica Parker Carey, I think, doesn't call 911 or anything, and fans are mad. So,
Interesting.
yeah. I'm not a big Peloton fan myself, I have to say, unpopular opinion, but I definitely prefer the in-person workouts.
Yeah. It's kinda like it feels like remember when the Snuggie came out and everyone said, "Why can't you just take a bathrobe and turn it around?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Why can't you just put a computer and exercise bike and watch it watch a class? Like, why does it have to be
Oh,
attached?"
man. The number of analogies we can make for products like that. I mean,
All right,
people will
here's
pay for
my pitch.
convenience.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's Peloton, but for the bedroom. So it's a bed
Peloton for
with
the
a built
bedroom. Tell me more.
yeah, it's a bed with a built-in screen that comes out and gives you like this is how we market it. We say it's deep breathing exercises to help you rest and sleep more soundly and plays relaxing music. And there's sleep teachers. But really, what gets people in is the X-rated section, which is, love making strategies and in classes where you and your lover can basically have a virtual orgy with people. And it teaches you all sorts of bedroom tricks and what have you. And it's like live in person on the camera. That's my pitch. I don't know what do we call it? Like
I
fuckathon
don't
or I don't know, Peloton in the
I
bedroom.
mean,
If you're out
from
there, Peloton, I think this could sell.
well, let's discuss the mechanics of this. So, from an intimacy perspective, sure. I think there is a large market for couples in that realm who don't have the confidence to go to, like, a sex therapist, right?
Would love a
Totally see that.
camera in their room at that
Yeah.
point.
Subsequently, though, isn't, the purpose of relaxing not to have screen time? Like, isn't that going to
No, we'd
completely
say that
completely
our screen was
contradict?
specifically designed to make you sleep better or some shit, and it would be a
Yeah,
dope
I'd like a
mattress.
patent for that technology, a screen that makes you sleep better. Hello, Apple, are you on top of that yet? Like,
Yeah,
we're all
and
on TikTok all nights before we go to bed.
it could be like one of those smart mattresses that controls the different areas, that you sleep. You know how they have the kind that control the firmness or whatever, so you could have, deep sleep mode and then playtime mode and afternoon, get ready mode. It's basically a smart bed is what I'm selling you. but maybe Peloton wants to get on this before anything else, and then they can say, "Oh, we'll track your sleep to your next set." I actually, they who did ended up acquiring them? Was like United Health and them have like a big deal now, or because I
Peloton?
remember thinking that Apple was definitely going to acquire Peloton because that's just kind of a market that they haven't entered yet. Healthcare or exercise being a component of healthcare itself, and I figured that that could expand their Apple Watch catalog and make some of their products a little more useful in that regard. So I thought it was interesting that they went a different direction because I think Apple could have made them much more successful.
Yeah, I think from my understanding, Peloton is still privately owned by.
But they have some kind of partnership with United Healthcare, is that not right?
I have not heard that, but I'm definitely looking this up right now.
And they
Interesting.
have they now have a treadmill.
They do have a treadmill and like bar classes. So Peloton, I was wrong, is a publicly traded company on that. I
Oh yeah,
don't
they
see
went public.
they
They're
went
just
public. Yeah.
not their stock
1.8.
isn't doing super great.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I
you know
don't
what?
see
This
any.
was recorded in January of 2022. So to any future listeners, maybe Peloton stock's way up and you should give them a chance. Maybe I was wrong. And maybe the reason their stock is way up at whatever future date is they took a page out of my book and made the fuckathon or whatever I'm gonna call it. And now the sleeping has been brought into the future thanks to our technology overlords.
I think Peloton stock goes up every time COVID learns a new Greek alphabet letter, honestly.
That's fun. I like that. Well, cool. I like that we found my genius. So I don't actually have a ton else to talk about. Anything else you want to add, Paula, about working remote, starting a business, maybe your experience? Any questions you have for me? Go ahead. I'm here. What do you want to wrap up with?
Would you ever work for yourself?
Would I ever work for myself? Sure, why not?
Yeah,
Can I pay me as much as I want to be paid, which is quite a lot more than I'm deserving of?
I think you can. I think, there's a lot of people out there, especially with remote working and the freelance culture and all these new resources that never existed when I started this on my own, that are out there. I think a lot of people can get success a lot more easily than maybe they anticipate, if they did go off on their own and do independent consulting. I make more money than I ever thought I did, I'll put it that way. Ever thought I
There's a
would.
really good book called Unscaled by Hemant Taneja, I
Yeah,
think
I've
his
heard
name
of
is.
that.
Yeah, I read it once, and he basically argues what you're talking about is that we live in a time where now organizations don't need to be responsible for every component of their business like they used to. That being supply chain, website design, shipping, payroll, HR, employee management, all that
Mhm.
stuff he calls it unscaling. Instead of
Yeah,
having to scale up to be an organization that does everything, you can just do one thing super well,
yeah,
which has always kind of been the secret to any business's success, and take off the rest of it. And then, obviously there are organizations like Amazon who mastered the art of taking your capital expenditures and turning them into revenue streams. But for someone like that just wants to make an honest buck, earn his honest living, there are a ton of avenues that weren't there before if you want to start a small business. So that's cool.
absolutely. I mean, the quickest path to success in starting your own business is picking something you enjoy and becoming the master of it. Like carving out niches, you hear successful business owners say this all the time, but it's true. I never would have landed, a very large deal with Uber or with Fox's streaming services or MGM Resorts if we didn't have a very specific niche we
Look
were
at
very good at to
you
market.
name dropping. I love it. I'm here for it. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, anything else, Paula? Anything you'd like to add before we call this one quits?
No, I think we should keep this short and sweet. I think, 2 year plus years in the pandemic, everyone's kind of sick about hearing about remote working. So no need to drag that on.
Yeah, well, at least you gave them an opportunity to know that it can be pretty badass with some international travel spiced in there and my humps blasting on big old speakers behind you on call. So thank you all for joining today. Thank you, Paula, so much for joining me. I hope you guys enjoyed this one and come check out some more Hos Angeles podcasts soon. Thanks, everyone.